Okay, well, I see that most of us are here. Some will be joining us along the way, but I just want to say I'm grateful to those of you who are curious enough, interested enough in the subject matter, because it's something that's important to me, and I hope that I'm able to convey effectively why that is and why I believe it has substance and import. So stay with me. We covered the theory of integral Judaism last week, and tonight we'll cover the practice. So I'm going to speak probably for 20, 30 minutes just to give you some preparation for it. And then at around 7:30, we're actually going to meditate. We're going to practice this meditation. It's a simple meditation practice for 10 minutes. And then we'll have a chance to process it in small groups. And then we'll come back together for Q&A, and that should take us to around 8 o'clock. Now, for those who want to go a little deeper, we'll do another meditation. The same meditation would go at it a second time for 10 minutes from 8 o'clock to 8:10. And then we'll have about 5 minutes to discuss and process it. And then at 8:15, you can be on your way. If you've had enough by 8 o'clock, you're excused. But if you want to stay with us and really get a good handle on what this is, I invite you to stay. And that is because I believe this is a practice that can be easily integrated into any spiritual meditation practice you already have. And whether it's a sitting practice or an active practice like Mussar, where you're mindful of something throughout the day. So this will give you something to be mindful about. And I'll be really interested not only to hear your experience tonight after we practice it briefly, but my hope is that you'll practice it throughout the week. And then next week, we'll be able to have a more in-depth discussion about what it was like for you and where to go from there. Okay, I'm going to share my screen with some PowerPoint images, just like I did last time. And then I'll just have to go into presentation mode. I'll get rid of this window. And I'll close that. So, how's that look? Ready to go?
Yes.
Okay, one really key summary of integral thought is this subtitle that Reb Zalman included on his book, Integral Halakha, Transcending and Including. I want you to write that down or at least remember it. Transcending and including. What does that mean? Well, I mean, we can have a discussion about it, but I'll give you just my own take on it, and then I invite you to think about it more. What the practice and the theory, the approach that we're taking is one that will transcend, but include everything else, every experience, every object of thought. It will transcend and include it. Similar with the ego, we hopefully in spiritual practice, we can transcend the ego, but it's not rejecting the ego or destroying it, but it's including it in a greater way. Now, I had an experience when I was in college. I was meditating, and I had this experience like, whoa, I became really curious. I thought, what if I was like an onion and I could peel off each layer of what I thought was myself? What would be left? And I got down to what felt like the core of my being. And I asked my friend who I was with, I said, should I let go and discover what this is? And he had no idea what I was talking about, naturally. But it was something I decided that it was important enough for me to decide on my own without anyone else's input. And I let go of what felt to be like the last vestige of my personality. And I suddenly had an experience of expansiveness, One could say it was an out-of-body experience, but it was as though my body disappeared and I was in the cosmos. And it was such a expansive experience I wasn't prepared for, that I immediately grabbed back onto my sense of self. And it was a frightening experience. But for days afterwards, I felt this sense of peace, that I had touched something profound. And I was very curious to rediscover what that was. And that's really been then the driving force in my life to pursue spirituality, meditation, and what brings me to this point in my life right now. Now, I began my spiritual path back in high school, and I began practicing meditation with friends at a Sikh ashram in Pikesville, Maryland. And they followed the teachings of Guru Nanak. And he said that Sikhism is not about hearing voices from God, but it's about changing the nature of the human mind. And anyone can achieve direct experience and spiritual perfection anytime. He emphasized that all human beings can have direct access to God without rituals or priests. And one of his primary practices, aside from different forms of yoga, was the repetition of a name, using a mantra meditation. And very powerful, and it stuck with me to this day. We've got, I wonder if you could mute yourself, because we're getting some interference from someone. There's some feedback or something. So if you could mute yourself, I'd appreciate it.
Moshe, if you want to make me co-host, I can take care of it when it needs to happen.
We'll see if it's an issue, then I'll exit the display right now and do that. But I'm not able to do right now.
Everybody's muted now.
Okay, terrific, thank you. Now, another spiritual teacher of mine, I feel obligated to introduce you to. I might have mentioned it before. When I came out to San Francisco at the age of 19, I joined up with a group that followed the teachings of this guy named Ramana Maharshi. Here he is as a young man, but he later, you might have seen this photo of him as a very benign older man who had, he taught self-realization through a practice that he called self-inquiry. And his idea was very simple. It didn't involve worshiping gods and goddesses. It simply involved asking yourself the question, who am I? And if you get down to the core of who that is, what that is, you discover that it's much more than the person that you thought you were. But there's a part in you that in Hindu theology or Hindu philosophy, they call Atman, the divine self, the self with a capital S, that is one with Brahman, the formless energy of the universe. In Judaism, we might call that the divine spark. So he was an important teacher of mine, but eventually I realized I wasn't born a Buddhist or Hindu, but I was born a Jew, and I could find spirituality in Judaism. Actually, before that, though, this was another teacher of mine, Tukaram, who I mentioned last week. He may be my most revered teacher and one who I think I most like. If you read his biography, you'd see why I relate to it. I can tell you that sometime later. But this is when I came upon the Jewish path. It was this story that really intrigued me. This encounter Moses had at the burning bush. He understood it as God speaking to him. And here we see a very personified, anthropomorphic depiction of that. But as you may recall from the story, he just saw a burning bush and he asked God, who are you? And what shall I tell the Israelites? Who was it that sent me? And God said, Eheyeh asher eheyeh. I will be what I will be. And then he said, tell them that Adonai sent you. And by Adonai, I mean the four-letter name Yud-He Vav-He, which is our tradition's most sacred name. So Yud He Vav He has been with us throughout Jewish history. It's been tied into so much speculation about the Sephirot and the nature of the universe. And here we see a diagram that was based on the theosophy of Moses de Leon in the 13th century Spain. And that this gave rise to the Zohar, which is the most well-known classic of the Kabbalah. But a contemporary of his was not as well known. His name is Abraham Abulafia. And he developed what is called prophetic Kabbalah. And he believed that by repeating God's name or different configurations of God's name, one could achieve prophetic states, much like the ancient prophets. And one could achieve really the perfection of consciousness, the complete evolution of consciousness. But his techniques were very involved and very elaborate because to maintain one's focus and concentration on God's name, it's very easy for the mind to start thinking about other things. But he developed these practices of saying each letter using a different vowel, and a very long and elaborate form of meditation that required great concentration so that your mind wouldn't wander. Here's another version of it you can see. And there are actually head movements that you're supposed to move your head in different directions as you repeat each sound and each combination of sounds. There's a contemporary teacher, Rabbi, who teaches this, and I can't remember his name. I'll find it for you if anyone's interested. But it's a little too elaborate for me. But there are many forms of meditation like that, where you can see Yud He Vav He spelled out, and Aleph He Yud He, and forms of Siddharim, meditative practices, Kabbalistic meditations that involve all these different forms of the divine name. And here's probably one of the best known phrases from the Psalms that make reference to the name. Shiviti Adonai lenegdi tamid, or Shiviti Yud He Vav He lenegdi tamid. Yud He Vav He we understand to be God's name, but it's really, I have to tell you, it's much more than that. And if we think about that philosophy again that I told you about, transcending and including, Yud He Vav He is absolutely, it transcends all else. Even any conceptions of God, any kind of anthropomorphic concepts one might have, it's completely transcendent. And so this idea, Shiviti Yud He Vav He lenegdi tamid, could mean, it could be interpreted in two ways. One is, I keep, if you understand Yud He Vav He to be God, I keep God before me always. It's like I'm always aware that God is with me. But another way of understanding this is I keep that four-letter name before me always, like an object of meditation. And that became a very well-developed and very popular practice, to the point where there is a certain art form that was developed called a shiviti, based on the first word. And so you can see an example of that here. This is a shiviti. And you can see the verse, the phrase in Hebrew at the top, shiviti Yud He Vav He lenegdi tamid. And then there's all these other words and prayers and kavanot and meditations that one could engage in as a form of meditation. But this art form became very well developed, and there are thousands of them. And usually they're placed on the eastern wall of your house, so that when you look at it, you're facing east. Here's another one. All different kinds of designs, but you can see how much energy and attention is given to that four-letter name. Here's one that's a little more modern that includes the Shema in it. Shema Yisrael, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, Eloheinu, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh Echad. That Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh is one, meaning that it transcends and includes everything in the universe. You might also have seen the four letters depicted this way, also as a form of meditation, where one might think of a human being. Here it is, an anthropomorphic, interpretation of it, but it is an aid to meditation where you can imagine a human being, the name in human form, standing before you. This is a depiction of transcending and including. You can see as consciousness evolves and expands, it includes what came before it. And if you look at it sideways, it might look something like this. You probably know this is one of my favorite images. And this represents our ever-evolving journey, which again involves transcending, but including the prior stages. This is something, I have so many books here on Jewish meditation. Some of you may have as many, if not more, books than I do. And I've spent many years reading many of them, and I'm sure some of you have as well, and even practicing different forms of meditation, Jewish or otherwise. This is in the book, Meditation from the Heart of Judaism. This was by Daniel Matt, a renowned scholar over in the East Bay. I'll read the section at the bottom. If I approach life with a bit of clarity that I can gain through meditation, then my life will be less secular and more spiritual. You integrate meditation and life just by being sensitive to the possibilities that arise. The possibilities of relationship, the possibilities of creativity that we often miss. Starting the day with a little bit of tranquility can help you identify those opportunities and engage them. One of the benefits of meditation is that it enables us to surrender the images we have of God and self. Meditation is an opportunity to melt these down and refashion them. The Bible demands that we smash the idols. We can extend this idea from the physical idols of stone to the mental concept of God. Each smashing of an image allows for a more expanded image, which itself must be expanded until we have smashed all the images. That's what happens in the laboratory of meditation. Then we confront God anew each moment. So this is going to be a laboratory. We are the scientists as well as the subjects of this experiment. And so what I'm going to propose is a simple practice that's consistent and compatible with any other meditation practice you may have. Now, I had a little beta group practice this with me a few weeks ago. Michelle was part of that group, and so was Hillary. Am I missing anybody who's here right now? I don't think so. But we'll be interested to hear what your experience has been because you've had a little more time to practice this. But here's what I'm going to suggest. It's nothing new, nothing radical, nothing all that different from anything anyone has probably practiced. I'm going to use the word or the name Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. Now, what I want you to know for people who are challenged by any concepts of God, it doesn't have to represent God. It could just be a sound or a syllable, but it's inherently Jewish. And if you incorporate that in any kind of meditation practice that you have, it's like planting a seed. And from that can grow a Jewish spiritual practice. Another way of seeing that word or that name is imagining it to be a portal into another dimension. Now, at the end of our last session, I had you break into groups to talk about experiences that you had, like meaningful experiences that you had either by yourself or in a group. And you might have been wondering, what did that have to do with the content that I was sharing with you about integral Judaism? Here's where it's important. The object of meditation is, maybe clarity of mind and so forth, but I think there's an experiential component to it. And we spoke about the experience of awe, which I think may be the most important experience we can have, because it blows our minds, it expands our minds to what was not in the realm of our ordinary consciousness. And so I want you to associate any positive or expansive or spiritual experience you've had with this name, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. And over time, it becomes, there's an association that's made so that it becomes so powerful that when you meditate on that word or on that name, it instantly will elicit an experience. There's an experiential component to it that can lead one to a sense of deep meditation. In the East, it's called samadhi, a form of absorption. In Jewish mysticism and Hasidism, it's called devekut, D-E-V-E-K-U-T. Now I want to tell you, I shared this story last time about Reb Zusia. I'll share it again briefly. Zusia rarely could share the teachings of his Rebbe, because when he would listen to the teachings of his Rebbe would start out with quoting scripture like Vayomer Adonai el Moshe, and God said to Moses. And as soon as he heard that, Vayomer Adonai, it sent him into such rapture that he missed the rest of the teaching. But it didn't matter, because he got it. He got the essence of what his Rebbe was teaching. And so it's possible to develop that kind of response to that word or that name, so that as soon as you sit down and start to meditate with it, boom, you can go very deep into your meditation. But that takes time and practice. What usually happens is you meditate, and here's how you do it. There's different ways to do it, but this is the way I'm going to recommend, so that we all have kind of a uniform practice that we can discuss later. When you breathe in, you say to yourself, Yod-Heh. And when you breathe out, you say to yourself, Vav-Heh. You could do it quietly in your mind, or you can say it sometimes out loud, can actually help to maintain the focus and concentration that's required. Now, if anyone's practiced TM, you know that they give you a mantra, and it's supposed to be private. You're not supposed to share it with anybody, but it could be just a nonsense syllable that doesn't mean anything. But the idea there is that it almost doesn't matter what you meditate on. If you meditate on one thing, one object that you focus on, to the point where your wandering mind stops wandering, it opens you up to another dimension of experience. Now, I'll mention that the wandering mind is very much associated with what we might call the ego, the sense of self that we have. We often use ego in a sentence like, oh, he has a big ego. There's kind of a derogatory or, negative valence to it. But it doesn't really have to be that way. A good life, a good person has a well-developed, functioning ego. We all need that, a sense of a good, rounded sense of self. But that's all connected to our thinking and thought processes. But when we still that through the process of concentration or meditation, it begins to expand. And the experiences that are possible are actually infinite. And I was going to say that you could meditate on any word, but why not meditate on a word that has profound Jewish meaning and resonance? You may not even understand the meaning, but you know that it has a deep, it has a connection with our tradition going way back. And I can tell you that mystics and, contemplative people and meditators and rabbis have been contemplating and meditating on that word, that name, for eons. So why not accept it and embrace it and see where it can take you? Because the contemplative possibilities are unlimited. But for now, we start with a very simple practice. I want you to practice with me just a couple of times. Breathe in, Yud Hey. Breathe out, Vav Hey. Yud Hey. Vav Hey. And it's that simple. Well, actually, it sounds simple. But what's challenging is that you'll begin to notice your mind starts to wander. And it's possible to do that while you're thinking about other things. But if you're mindful enough, you'll notice, you'll say, no, wait a minute. This is time for meditating, not thinking. And you'll bring your attention back to those sounds and that practice. Now, there are other aids to meditation because it's very easy your mind can wander. Before you know it, you fall asleep. So some other aids might be a metronome. Hillary and Michelle know that there are many metronomes you can download. I downloaded one that was really easy and simple, and you set it so that you could press it so that it beats at a rhythm that you can maintain. And when your mind starts to wander, you hear the sound and you say, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be meditating. Some people use something tactile, like beads. And you can use a bead. This is something that an ancient practice from India and from, all around the world, where you do one bead for each name or each letter. But that's another way to maintain your focus, because when your mind starts to wander, you notice, oh yeah, my fingers are doing this, and it brings you back. Doing it with other people can help you stay a little more focused. Hillary actually also mentioned something very good. Visualizing something can give you something to do with your mind's eye while you're doing that. You might, keep a shaviti in front of you. Actually, you see one here that I've had for many, many years. You could sit in front of it and look at it. Or you could imagine the letters, in any configuration that you want in your mind. But anything you can do to help you bring your focus back to that name. Start with 10 minutes, go with 20 minutes, go with 25. And the more time you can spend in it, the more practice, the more proficient you become. And I can tell you, it is like a seed that will be planted very deep in your soul. And no matter where you go, no matter what practice you have, if you carry that with you, you'll always be carrying some very deep essence of Judaism with you. So we're going to try this for 10 minutes. Actually, any questions? Let me just take any questions, comments, and then we're going to go into the practice.
I have a comment. I heard you say that kind of the I don't think you used the word goal, but like a point or a purpose, a goal, or I don't remember what word you said, is transcendence. And I would just like to put another perspective that, like, for me, a goal, I don't really have a goal, but it's more about the presence in the moment than the transcendence into the other realm. And when I can find that presence in the moment, that creates the space for that transcendence to occur.
It's very, very, thank you for mentioning that. You know, a lot of people, you know, might get frustrated. I'm not having a transcendent experience. You know, and that's the thing. You really don't want to have a goal with meditation. It's better just to have the practice. But
listen, that's what I call soul. Soul is here on earth. It's present. It's not beyond. It's not transcendent. It's part of what is.
Absolutely, I love that. Very true. All of what you've said is true. So
I've always looked at meditation being to hear, you know, to that out of meditation comes, I hate to use the word God, but I'm going to say that's God speaking to me, you know, but so, but to hear, I guess is what I want to say.
yeah, you know, everyone will experience it differently. And Jerry, that's a beautiful and meaningful way of experiencing meditation, but not everyone will relate to it that way. But let's begin with the practice, and then we'll have a little discussion. So we're going to do this for 10 minutes. I'm not going to set a time. I'm going to set a timer. I'm not going to set a metronome because, you know, this is probably not something you're used to. But just know that we're here present with each other. Breathe at your own pace. Use the letters or the name quietly so it doesn't disturb anyone else's meditation, or put yourself on mute. And listen says, yes, Shema, there's something very good in the chat box. Shema means listen, hear. So we're going to do this for 10 minutes, and then at 10 minutes, I'm going to say something just to bring us all back, okay? And let's see how we do with this. So inhale with the Yud Hey, exhale with Vav Hey. And I'm going to put myself on mute as well. Make sure you're in a comfortable space. And we'll begin now. All right, we'll begin to bring our awareness back to the fact that we're here together. That was just 10 minutes, but in some ways it felt like an eternity. In some ways it felt like a very short time. But very interesting and fruitful, fertile time spent. Now I'd love to hear how some of you experienced this past 10 minutes. But since it's a little easier just to talk to one or two people at a time rather than talking to a whole group, I'm going to suggest that we do breakout rooms with just one, 2 or 3 people in a room, just randomly assigned. I'd like you to share with your partner or partners what that was like for you. And then we'll come back together and like to then share out some of what you've shared together. Okay, we'll have 10 minutes to discuss with your partner. Here you go. Okay, so I just want to hear anyone willing to share with the group what it was like for you or your partner, or what came up in your discussion. Anybody? Oh, make sure you unmute yourself. Nina, I see you making a move to share.
That's right. Sorry. So should we raise our hand, or how should we?
Yeah, you can raise your hand. There's also a way to do that virtually somewhere, but anyway. Hey, everybody, this is my friend Nina in Sunnyvale. She's a Unitarian Universalist minister. Is that right to say?
That's fun.
Yeah, so a dear friend. So thank you for joining us tonight. So
Oh,
what,
thank you for letting me join us. So I want to thank my partner because she was very helpful. I had a lot of questions that I didn't, ask when the whole group was together. And she helped me out with that. And one of the things that I shared was that, I have a regular meditation practice and I'm aware of the fact that there's a different, I don't know if the right word is quality. I'm not sure that's the right word, but there's a difference when I meditate by myself, as I do every morning, or when I've meditated with a group. And it was very interesting to me that, and I find that meditating with a group, it seems like a very powerful experience, and it works over Zoom. I just discovered that. I mean, I thought that was so interesting because what is that feeling, and that and it happens over Zoom too. Anyway, that was something that happened for me, a realization.
thank you for sharing that observation. Somebody else. Nancy.
Our group also talked about the power of meditating in a group. And we were exploring the possibility of having a Zoom space that was open every morning at a certain hour, although we couldn't figure out what hour would work for all three of us, but where you could go and you might find many or no other people there, but often there'd be a number of us, and a bell would ring and we'd meditate together. And it could be just sort of an option that was there.
It's interesting.
And, because it does feel different, in a group.
Yeah, let's see if we can figure something out. Hillary was sharing with me, she uses Headspace, that meditation app, and then they have an option where you can just enter this space where other people are meditating, and Hillary, doesn't it tell you how many people are there in that space from anywhere?
Right. It's even more ethereal than meditating in a group on Zoom, because all you know is that 64 other people are meditating, or you'll go on and they'll say, 15 people are waiting to meditate at, and it might be, time 10 minutes from now, and you do a group meditation with people around the world in this case, since they do have an internet, since they're originally Australian, they have an international subscribership. And you just know that you're meditating with whatever it is, 57 or 82 or whatever other people.
That's pretty cool. But Nancy, I like your idea. Let's see if we might do something like that. One more comment before we're gonna try another round for anyone who'd like to stick with it. Rachel.
Yeah, we talked about breath and the rhythm of breathing and the rhythm of the mantra, because when I concentrate on breath, I start breathing more shallow and it's faster and I get panicky, like I can't breathe. So, Hillary suggested slowing down the mantra so it's just one letter with each intake or outflow. So it'd be Yud, in, and Hey, out. Love, in, Hey, out. And we also talked about using Shalom rather than Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey, or Listen was talking about Yah or Hi, so that you can use different rhythms to deal with how the breath is working with it. And Gordon was also talking about an exercise of, correct me if I get this wrong, Gordon, but breathing in for 5 counts, then breathing out for 7 counts, and just holding there for 3 counts. So learning to control your breath and to breathe deeply so you don't start this really shallow breathing. So we were talking a lot about breath.
Right. There are many, many ways of managing that, but using breath in one's meditation is profoundly beneficial. And here's a metronome I use sometimes. You can see how it goes. This is Vav, Okay. Good. Okay. Wow. So you can set a metronome like that. Okay. We're going to meditate one more time. This is going to be maybe, we'll do just an 8-minute meditation. And then I'm going to wrap it up with a few closing comments. Okay. I'm going to set the timer for 8 minutes and try what, any variation that works for you. Okay. Ready? We begin now. We'll bring our awareness back to our being together as we draw this session to a close in the remaining 5 minutes. It's given us all much food for thought and much to process, I would expect. But I'll say a couple of things that I could say so much more, but I'll keep it really brief. Here are a couple of important things I want to say. I think that this kind of, I know you can use any word and, you know, and any phrase, and there's so many variations on this, and they're all good. But I've chosen this, at least if for no one else, for myself. This path, this name. One could say I'm hitching my wagon to that star. And I believe it will take me to where I am destined to go. And I think it has something to do with my teacher, my guru Tukaram, and with all the connections I've made with the Baal Shem Tov and everything else in my life, all leading to that. For me, that name, the name, transcends and includes everything else. And one could see it from a rational perspective, for sure. There are ways to explain it from a rational perspective. And one can see it from a religious perspective. You know, one could associate that name with a being, an intelligence, a creator, God, you know, someone before whom I stand. And you can see how easily that could develop, you know, as a means of subjugating my wandering mind when I think that there's someone watching, someone listening, someone commanding me to obey. I don't know, you can go anywhere with that. But I believe that that's given rise to liturgy, and how all the liturgy in the prayer book is all just kind of window dressing around that name. Even you can say that about scripture. All the stories that center around that four-lettered name all arises from what the mind can create, from just that one word, that one name. So go where you will with it. But for me, I'm going to go more deeply into that practice. And I believe that it has the power to transform my life and maybe even this community. And what I think is kind of interesting about it is it's not something new. It's not something you can sell or market, really. I'm not sure how much commercial value it has, but you know, if you really take it within and practice it as I intend to do, I believe it has the power to transform. So I want to say just something about next week. What I'd really like to see happen is that each of you will take this practice in whatever way you can and incorporate it into your daily lives. And let's get back together in a week and see what results we've had from it, what questions might have come up. And then I'd like to discuss in the final session how to integrate that into your life and into your Mussar practice, bringing it back full circle, because that's where we started with all of this. But I really wanted to bring a spiritual foundation to the practice of Mussar that works for people who are theists and non-theists. And now hopefully you can see where I've been going with this. So let's see how it goes in the coming week. And I'll send you an email just to follow up with some thoughts and ideas and the Zoom link and the recording from tonight. And God willing, we'll be together a week from now. I'll stick around if anyone wants to chat, but thank you for being with us tonight and good luck with your practice.